Good morning. My name is Harry Cole. For those of you who do not know me, like David, I am a Presbyterian minister of some duration. At the moment, I'm leading a small congregation in the mountains of northern Arizona, where I'm looking down on you from 4,000 feet above sea level. That said, I am sure that David is looking down on us from a vantage point of a lot higher up. David and I worked together at the First Presbyterian Church in Ocala in the early aughts, while the congregation was searching for a new permanent pastor. Our time together was relatively short in Presbyterian scheme of things, where ministers can hang around churches almost forever, sometimes well beyond their shelf life. But not so, I think, for David and for me. We had a grand time together, at least I did. David was my trusted friend and colleague, more so than any other in my 55 years of ministry. And believe me, that is saying something. And I attribute it more to him than I do to myself. David had a true gift in ministry, consisting of a gentleness of spirit and a genuine quality of decency and goodness, which to those of you who are not familiar with our Presbyterian Book of Order are the paragons of virtues in the makeup of a pastor. David had that, and much more than that. David was a Christian gentleman. I remained close to both David and Anna following my years in Ocala, and I cherish the times we had together, and I thank God for them all. Now, let me take a minute or two to speak of some of our adventures together, and then speak of some of David's quirks. We often play tennis together with some church members, some of whom may be here this morning as you hear this. And we often lost. And we often tired out before we lost, saving the prospect that we would have probably lost again. And then there was that one time when we were duped into playing scribes together in the fellowship hall, dressed up as only ancient Old Testament scribes could be, wrapped in the finest of gold-trimmed robes and turbans of distinction. The shtick was that he would sit at one corner of the room and read long letters of inquiry to me, and in my wisdom, I would respond from the other side of the room. Then I would do the same with him. I can't recall the subject of discussion, but some of them had to be pretty off the rails because everybody was laughing, including especially us. And then there was David's addiction to all things baseball. His determination to get as many preseason games as possible, tickets for as many preseason games as possible in either the Grapefruit League in Florida or the Cactus League in Phoenix. One thing I knew when spring training came around, that I would be short one minister in the house for a week or so. And then there were the baseball cards, and the baseball cards, and still more baseball cards. A visit to David's house could not exclude the sight of boxes of baseball cards stacked in the hallways, in the corners of rooms, behind closed doors, and everywhere. Have you ever spent a night sleeping in a guest room with half of the baseball players who ever lived sitting in boxes right next to your bed? I remember Anna telling me what she wanted to do with them. but David held his ground. I'm glad he was resolute because I like baseball cards as well, along with one special card for a famous football player of my youth. David knew that. So during one Christmas season, he went down to one of his favorite haunts in Daytona Beach to find a perfect mint condition, sealed in a plastic case card of John Unitas of my home team, the Baltimore Colts, the greatest quarterback who ever played in my book. I keep that card in the top drawer of my dresser to this day. St. Paul, in his second letter to the Corinthians, to Timothy, writes to his young protege Timothy concerning the approaching end of Paul's ministry. The two have traveled long, far, and wide, together, preaching the gospel news. And the elder Paul writes to Timothy, speaking now of his departure. Paul has fought the good fight. Paul has won the race. Paul has kept the faith. And as he recites to Timothy, Paul knows that there is, quote, a crown of righteousness which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. May that be so for David. May it be so for all of us, whom God loves with cherished pleasure and cheerful abandon. Grace and peace be with us all.